Thank
you, Deputy Speaker. I want to commend the member for Indi for her contribution, the member for Riverina, and the member for Indi is correct. There's a common theme that's coming through with the speakers, and that is regional and rural Australia. And I'll add another element to that, peri-urban region as well. And the member for Riverina and Indi both paid compliment to the minister, and I want to do that as well. I mean, communications is such an important issue that should be bipartisan, and it's a credit to her that she's here today to listen. I'll talk a little bit about what's happening in my community today, but I know I've been inundated with calls and messages. I know it will mean a lot to them that you're here to listen, because this is such an important issue, particularly in emergencies. And I'll give the minister and her team fair warning. There's some correspondence coming following up from our correspondence earlier this year looking at eligibility around the Dandenong Ranges. I know you acknowledged, and I appreciate you acknowledge the concerns about resilience in peri-urban areas and having to look at the boundaries of the funding schemes and how we can resolve these. So we'll be looking forward to working with your office on how we can find funding for peri-urban areas. It's a continual frustration for my community, the Dandenong Ranges, the Upper Yarra, the Yarra Valley. It's 40-50 minute drive with no traffic from the CBD, but anyone that visits knows it's not suburban. It's beautiful nature, it's farmland, it's agriculture, it's mountains, it's challenging terrain. And there's a lot of beautiful trees, Deputy Speaker. There's a lot of tall trees, hundreds of feet. And the problem is when there's a storm, lots of trees fall down and we lose power. And when we lose power in our community, we lose communications. And there's about 70,000 properties that are without power today across my community. There's many community groups, there's many schools, including my children's own school, and I just want to pay tribute quickly to all those teachers that I know are teaching or doing the best they can today without any power at the school, and thank you to them and all the community that are rallying around to make sure we can get through. Hopefully it's only a couple of days, but the next week or so without power and communications. But I also need to acknowledge, for many people today, it's actually going to be a tough day. It's going to bring back some trauma from the June storms of 2021. Anyone that lived in my area, my community, was impacted by those storms. We were 3 weeks without power ourselves, but that was nothing. Many people in the Dandenongs were 3 months without power, and 2.5 years on, many haven't rebuilt yet. So I just want to acknowledge for those people today that might be okay physically and their house might be okay. There will be a lot of trauma also in our community. It's important we rally around and support each other. And I want to share a couple of stories of my experience on that day, but also from the CFA with the minister in the room, so she can understand my passion and my community's passion for why we need strong, resilient emergency services. On that day, we were blocked in, my wife and I, in our house for about 6 to 8 hours. Trees had come down at the front of our road, so we couldn't leave our house, and the CFA came and checked on us within a couple of hours, and we were really fortunate. But the scary part, Deputy Speaker, about that experience is we've got quite a few trees around our house, and no trees fell down but we had on the house, and so we were safe. But we actually had that conversation because while phones are very convenient, when there's no internet, there's no phone reception, they're the most useless thing in the world. And we don't have, like many houses, a landline. So we had that conversation in that moment of, if a tree had fallen on our house and I'd been hurt, or my wife or our children, we literally had no ability to get out and to get help. The cars couldn't leave the driveway, and it's a moment where you realise how vulnerable you are in those times. Bushfires are another significant threat in our community. I lived through Black Saturday, the 2019 bushfires live with us all. And we were, and the CFA have said this, we were fortunate in a way that the storms were a static event. And so it was a significant event, but it wasn't a dynamic, fast-moving event. So communications was a significant issue, but it wasn't as significant if it was a bushfire and we were trying to get updates on the spot. And that's what we're talking about. And just to highlight the challenges from an emergency services perspective, I spoke to Sarah, who's a friend of mine who I've known for many years, from the Sassafras Ferny Creek CFA. During the storms, the only way they could communicate and was literally she had her mobile phone placed on one little spot in their station, one little spot, and she was trying to text people, and if she moved it even a centimetre, she said it felt like it would drop in and out. And that was how the CFA across the Dandenong Ranges were trying to communicate with each other in the middle of the night with trees continuing to fall down. The Emerald SES had one of their vehicles crushed on that night, and luckily, by luck, the two SES members weren't in the vehicle, but again, if they were and they'd been hit, they had no ability to call for support or for help during that storm. And so I do want to pay tribute to all our volunteers, the CFA and the SES. They don't get paid for this. They are volunteers that have left their families in the middle of the night in pitch dark to go and help other people, to put their lives on the line. And what we need to do as governments, and this is not a criticism of the government, this is bipartisan because it is a challenging situation, I acknowledge that, the terrain, the topography, it's not about politics, it's about working in a bipartisan way to make them as safe as possible, so when they risk their lives to protect our community, they've got the communications they need to call for backup. And as I said, I understand it's challenging, but the frustration my community has, and it's happened previously, it's not about this government. It's things like the Mobile Network Hardening Program, when we get the community not being able to get funding and they're told that they're a metropolitan area, it just furthers that frustration for us. So I am really grateful. I didn't expect the Minister to be here, but I'm glad I could share those stories on behalf of my community and looking forward to continuing to work with you on that. We've got people that are lucky, but it's also about that resilience and the reality that NBN and communications is an essential service in emergencies, but also day to day in our community. So Belinda Young from Mums of the Hills has been an amazing advocate for this, because you need to understand, if you live in the Dandenong Ranges or if you live in the Upper Yarra or the Yarra Valley, your neighbour is not 15, 20 metres away. They are kilometres away. Even if they're next door, you've got a couple of k's up your driveway and you're a couple of k's around. You cannot just walk to your neighbours. So isolation, for mums in particular, and young mothers that are at home with their children, is a significant issue. And being able to communicate with their friends on their phones, through Facebook and social media, is so crucial. And I want to share how Mums of the Hills started, because it's an important story, but it highlights how important communications are. And Belinda founded Mums of the Hills because she'd moved to the area and her husband was at work. She was at home with their young son and she fell off a ladder and hurt herself. And she was lucky that it wasn't significant. But it was in that moment that she realised she didn't actually know anyone in the area that could support her. She literally couldn't walk, even if she was able to, but she wasn't able to walk to the neighbours because of living in the Dandenongs. And that's how she founded Mums of the Hills, as a Facebook group to support mums as they go through challenges and to build that connection. And this is the only way, as I said, Deputy Speaker, these mums initially can communicate. And I didn't stay at home, but I know my wife is very often reminding me that it's even if you can duck out with a couple of young kids, it's not 5 minutes. There is a process that you need to go to. So this network of friends through Facebook is really important. They got through COVID as a community. They're continuing to support each other through financial challenges, other challenges. But I know Belinda has spent a lot of time advocating for communications as an essential service, and I want to thank her for her advocacy and continue to support that, and say that we need to do more in this regard. But it's not just the Dandenongs, it's also our farming communities in the Yarra Valley that have challenges. Last year, as an example, there was a satellite that went down and tractors across the country stopped working. Farmers weren't able to farm, and it's a great example of, again, the advantages of the digital economy, the advantages, the productivity gains, the efficiencies we can get from technology and digital, But if we're so reliant on it, we've got no redundancy in our system, it creates risk. And that's why we need to continue to make sure that in our regional farming communities, NBN, again, isn't a nice to have. As the member for Indi said, we don't want strong NBN so we can watch Netflix. We need a strong connection to internet so we can farm, so we can work from home if we need to. If the kids are home, they can access their schooling, as we saw through COVID. It's a way of life. I've been able to just live, I don't want to use the term normal, but it's be able to have those basic abilities to communicate. Again, if something happens, your neighbour's not 2 minutes away. They're a long way away. And I think we need to look at, and I spoke about this in my first speech, understanding the new technologies that are available, and satellite communications is moving at a rapid pace. It provides opportunities that can alleviate some of the geographical and topography challenges that we face. And I asked the Minister, I understand we're moving down an NBN path and that is important, but I believe we need to look at whether it's NBN or private partnerships, how we can maximise satellites to really solve some of these challenges in hard-to-reach places, in areas like mine where there's valleys, where there's mountains, where geography plays a huge part in the challenges we face, and satellite has that opportunity as well. So we talk a lot about communications, and for many people it is about better internet access for Netflix and for just living their lives, working from home in the suburbs and middle suburbs, and that's important. I don't denigrate that. But is there a reason that a lot of regional, rural and peri-urban members have spoken today is because this is one of the biggest challenges our communities face. So I do finish again by thanking the Minister for being here to listen. I look forward to continuing to work with her on some bipartisan solutions for my community and many other communities as well.